Technology is transforming the way we live our lives, the world over. But this paradigm shift from analog to digital transacting is also fueling a wildfire of online scams. In 2020, total losses from authorised fraud were £479 million, with cases up by a fifth. Almost a third of these losses came from investment scams, up 42% from the previous year, while the number of romance scams rose by 38%, with losses totalling £21.2 million. A scam is like every other trick. It relies on misdirection, drawing your attention away from what the fraudsters are actually doing. Using topical and emotive scenarios, like a pandemic, for instance, fraudsters are able to conjure urgency, fear, and panic, with these scams forcing victims to act intuitively, without stopping to properly assess whether the situation they're being presented with is either plausible or genuine. So, when you're acting on instinct, how can you see through the smoke and mirrors?
Hi, I'm Joey Badgler, and I work in professional services as a Senior Engagement Manager for LexisNexis Risk Solutions. I analyze data and spot behaviors, patterns, and trends so that we can detect, identify, and prevent online scams. Online scams are difficult to detect, which presents us with a significant problem. But before we can catch the fraudsters, we need to understand the various methods they employ to hook their victims. So let's start with phishing. Phishing involves the fraudster targeting a victim via email sent under the guise of a legitimate organization or service. Weaving in elements of urgency and panic, the scam email will encourage the reader to click on a link which may then download malware onto the victim's computer without them knowing, allowing the fraudster to steal information such as card details. You may have received one of these emails yourself, informing you of an unexpected tax rebate or using other teasers to entice you to click a link. Next, vishing. Now this follows the modus operandi of phishing scams, with one key difference. The fraudster contacts their victim by telephone. This could be, for example, a cold call pretending to be from an internet provider, with the scammer manipulating the victim into installing remote access tool onto their computer, giving them full access to everything: online banking, loans, credit cards, and other accounts. Lastly, let's look at smishing. With smishing, the scammer's tool of choice is SMS text messaging. A text is sent to the intended victim, and again, by leveraging panic and urgency, the scam is designed to make the victim feel compelled to click the link in the text message. A common text scam seen in the wild are those pretending to be from your bank, informing you of a new payee or payment added to your account. But scammers will use almost any well-known brand to try and trick you. No matter whether by email, telephone, or text, the impact of scams is considerable. Not only can it devastate victims financially, but also emotionally, such as with romance scams, where loneliness is cruelly manipulated for monetary gain. Make no mistake, scams target your identity, heart, and soul. But perhaps because they're so prevalent, there are many misconceptions surrounding scams. So let's bust 3 of the biggest myths about online scams right now. Myth 1, only the elderly are scammed. Believe me, even the most savviest and the most technologically aware people can fall victim to online scams. The myth that only the old are scammed is busted by our latest findings from our cybercrime report. We found that actually it's the under 25s who are the most vulnerable to fraud attacks. likely because they're generally more active and comfortable sharing their personal details online, followed closely by the over 75s. Over 75s, however, draw the scammers' crosshairs as generally they have less familiarity with the latest technologies, and typically they have larger pots of money to target. Myth 2, you can't be tricked by the same scam twice. There's a myth that you can't be a repeat victim of the same scam. Unfortunately, it could not be further from the truth. In a corner of the dark web, there's something known as a suckers list, essentially a list compiled by fraudsters of successful scams and their victims. Other fraudsters use these lists to target susceptible people and even leverage the information to build trust and add authenticity to their ruse. For example, a victim of a previous bank fraud may be contacted by another fraudster claiming to be an employee from their bank, and using the knowledge of the previous scam from the suckers list, gain their trust and scam all over again. Myth 3, it will never happen to me. Never underestimate a scammer. They go through great lengths to make their scam and ruses as authentic as possible, such as spoofing phone numbers to look like they're from a genuine company or service. An important element of online scams is the fact that fraudsters always keep the story, or shall I say scam, relevant. Take the COVID-19 pandemic for example. Fraudsters tapped into the fear and uncertainty surrounding the pandemic with texts purporting to be from the NHS and instructing victims on how to get a vaccine. These fraudsters are investing in their scams, becoming more creative in the design and deployment of new scams. Some are so good, even the most discerning eye can fail to tell them apart from the genuine article. So how can we stamp out these scams? When a victim sends money to a scammer, the payment usually comes from the genuine customer's device. So solely relying on the device intelligence or reputation isn't enough in the fight against scams. So where do I start? Where it always starts with the data. We use data, and by that I mean specific data from our digital identity network to find patterns and behaviors. We then use this intelligence to build specific models geared towards flagging scams. But when it comes to the data, we do not only look at the device, we leverage hundreds of attributes to create a 360-degree view of the transacting user. Location, previous history, threat intelligence, and behavioral analytics. Put simply, we build and analyze the digital footprint of the transacting user. Using that intelligence, our data scientists build specific models to flag on any payments where there's a possibility that the customer is being scammed. What does that mean in practice? For one Tier 1 UK bank, our model drove more than 141% uplift in scam value on mobile payments in just 1 month. The devil is in the detail, so we look for anomalies that deviate from a customer's genuine behavior to flag that they are acting under the influence of another. For example, we can use behavioral biometric data to identify unusual activity, such as spending longer on a website page, as well as leveraging hundreds of attributes, which gives us the intelligence needed to spot when a customer's trusted device has been compromised by a remote desktop. Scams will only get smarter, harder to detect. Scammers will not get complacent, and nor will we in professional services. Our professional services team are expert in fighting fraud. Armed with a collective experience that is hard to rival, we continue to work with our customers, investigating, emerging trends and attacks, and innovating our solutions to enable you to better protect your customers and keep pace with fraudsters and the evolving cybercrime landscape.